Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar, The Secrets to Winning with Machine Learning. We will get started in about 60 seconds or so. Okay, we will go ahead and get started. As I said, hello everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, The Secrets to Winning with Machine Learning. I am Patrick Rice, the CEO of LumaDatum, a leading machine learning platform that grows revenue by optimizing marketing with artificial intelligence. But for today's topic, we're going to discuss the 5 keys that I have found will help ensure success deploying machine learning solutions. So without further ado, we'll dive into the content. So a little bit of background on myself. I've spent the last 13 years or so in the analytics space. I have played about every role in that space, from data engineer through data scientist. Most recently, before LumaDatum, I ran a worldwide advanced analytics team for Amazon and spent a few years as an advanced analytics product manager there as well. Currently, as I mentioned, the CEO of LumaDatum, where we get to work with a large variety of organizations and help them capitalize on the huge value of machine learning, just like the big tech companies do. But that's about all I'll say on that front. And now we'll dive into kind of level set on what machine learning is, and then further from there, figuring out sort of what are some of those keys that I've seen from my experience. A lot of people kind of go down the wrong path and make sure that you can deliver real ROI from your machine learning project. So before we begin, what is machine learning? The Wikipedia definition, machine learning is the subfield of computer science that, according to Arthur Samuel, gives computers the ability to learn without explicitly being programmed. So the question naturally stems from that. If this has been around since 1960 or so, for the last 57, 60 years, why is machine learning getting all of the attention that it is now? And the common explanation that I subscribe to is that effectively think of a three-legged stool, and within that you have this perfect confluence of different events that have come together to enable machine learning to, one, be really successful, but also two, to have a large variety of applications. And one of those is the rise of cloud computing. So certainly with the rise of AWS and Google's cloud and Azure, cloud computing and servers are largely a commodity at this point. Everybody out there has the ability to go up and spin up massive clusters of computing power that give you the ability to run a lot of these algorithms and train them on large data sets. So certainly cloud computing being one of those key cogs in that wheel. Another one being the rise of data, right? And so over the course of the last 10 to 15 years, pretty much all data and primary transactions are now digitally transacted. And so this gives companies a massive amount of digital information in order to work with. And that's just projected to continue to grow over the course of the next 5, 10 years, moving into the future. So companies have a ton of data, have access to huge farms of computers to be able to analyze that data. And then, of course, lastly, the advances that have been made from a technology and an algorithm perspective. So some of the recent work certainly on the neural network front and specifically within the space like deep learning, but also just the accessibility to a lot of other types of algorithms as well. So those three events have really kind of combined in order to enable this massive rise of machine learning that will only continue to get stronger and stronger here in the next couple of years. So now that we've talked a little bit about at least what machine learning is, you know, how do you see it? The reality is that everybody, pretty much everyone out there, is leveraging machine learning almost on a daily basis. So here's certainly a few examples. Everyone's pretty much heard of Amazon's product recommendation system. Netflix does a significant amount of recommendations on their site. You know, things like Siri on your iPhone. That's a great example of machine learning, and of course, Google search engine. So these are all, you know, different types of products and services, ranging from cell phones to searching the internet to a retail or an e-commerce environment, and you're interacting with machine learning or the outputs of machine learning in every one of these different areas. And this is just a handful. There are, of course, a lot of other examples out there as well. But the point being that in this day and age, everybody is pretty much interacting with machine learning at this point on a daily basis. So now that we've defined the what and outlined a little bit around the use cases, let's talk a little bit about why, right? Why should you, within your enterprise or your corporation, care about machine learning, and sort of how does it apply to you? The reality is, you know, we discussed some of the correlated events that have ultimately enabled the rise of machine learning. But this is really about sort of what makes it salient to you, what makes it pertinent to your particular organization. CIO put out a study not too long ago that said 96% of the companies were not capturing the full value of their data. And I can attest to this from personal experience. You know, dashboards and reports are not the peak of analytics, and quickly those are becoming outdated. Or at the very minimum, those are the table stakes. And now moving into machine learning, leveraging algorithms in order to find patterns in your data is really the next phase for how organizations can progress in order to extract value from their data. I've worked in about every environment, from small companies and startups to mid-sized organizations and enterprises, and the reality is there's a huge disparity in how much value companies are getting from their data. Data is this incredible natural resource that every organization has, and it's up to the individual organization to figure out how to harness the maximum amount of value from that resource. And so how does machine learning play into that? Well, you use machine learning to find patterns in your data that can then generate predictions to drive intelligent actions. And I think the end statement there, driving intelligent actions, is really a key component to talk about here, because one of the core advantages to machine learning is the ability to automate those core activities. So a customer says they are planning a big camping trip, and maybe they already bought a tent. You could then, figure out, okay, what's the next best product that you should recommend to them? Maybe a flashlight would go really well on their camping trip. And the reality is that taking advantage of these different components or attributes about that customer in order to predict, what type of event and what type of activity they're engaging in, so that you can figure out the best products to recommend to them, would be an example of applying machine learning. But the reality is that this same mentality can expand into about every avenue of your business, from what's the best email campaign or advertisement to show a customer. You could extend that into other areas, right, about what's the best way to manufacture a given product, or how much inventory should you keep on hand, and on and on. And the reality, you can apply this to a lot of different use cases within your organization. Okay, so now that we're on a level kind of playing field as far as the definition of machine learning, some of the benefits behind it, I want to focus the majority of the presentation here on the 5 keys to winning with machine learning. I will make a quick call out. I see some people are submitting questions. I'll spend about 30 minutes or so diving into the content, and then make sure to save a solid 10 minutes on the end to be able to answer any questions. So as we go along, if you have any questions that come up, feel free to submit them, and we'll get to those at the end. So having been through literally dozens of machine learning projects that have resulted in millions of dollars of return on investment, and a few failures in there as well, you know, I've picked up a few of the key lessons that at least I've seen along the way for how to go about implementing machine learning, how to think about implementing machine learning, and ultimately how to ensure that at the end of the day you're able to deliver on that promise of machine learning and deliver value back to your organization. Okay. So the first key is, what does winning even look like? And some companies, you know, are just exploring and going through maybe an R&D with machine learning, or sort of kicking the tires, so to speak, trying to figure out what they could do with that. And that's fine. And that's, you know, maybe going to be the right approach for some organizations. But the reality is you're not going to win going after that kind of approach. Jeff Bezos, in fact, just put out his annual shareholder letter, I think yesterday or 2 days ago. And one of the key, you know, he calls out 4 points. One of the key points in his letter was embrace powerful external trends quickly. And specifically, you know, identifies machine learning and AI as one of them right now. That these powerful external forces are not that hard to identify. They're out there. Everyone's talking about them. But for some reason or another, they become very, very difficult in order to be embraced within organizations. And there's a lot of internal inertia battling the development of these types of technologies within larger organizations especially. And so I think this is absolutely a key, is figuring out what does winning look like. And my advice is to pick a top corporate strategic objective and work your way backwards. So working backwards is something that we help our customers with often, from the standpoint of, you know, starting at that top line and starting at something that is critical and critically important to your organization, and then work your way down into figuring out, okay, what would be a great machine learning approach to helping, you know, contribute to that goal or solving that potential problem. Too often I hear data scientists, right, talking about precision or recall or area under the curve. And those are all great, right? They're going to help you optimize your algorithm, and they will ultimately, you know, help ensure, statistically speaking, that you're delivering the right results. But the reality is that driving real results to your organization is what's going to help you to ultimately deliver real value back to the organization, and ultimately, you know, make the machine learning project or make machine learning within your organization successful. If you're selling your project to the CMO or the CEO, they're not going to much care, right, about the latest algorithm you utilized or the incredible area under the curve that you were able to achieve. And I think that's a really kind of key lesson to make sure that you're starting at the right place. And this may seem obvious, but so many people tend to kind of start in the wrong place. I'm going to start by hiring a great data scientist, or I'm going to start by you know, going out and playing around with data. And all of those are you know, potential starting places, but I've seen those types of projects go wrong much more often than they succeed. So on this example, like what would be a hypothetical? And let's say that you have a top objective to grow your company's digital revenue. Well, you could take that high-level objective and then work your way backwards, right? What projects could you implement that could drive that growth? You could figure out ways to find new customers. You could figure out how to sell more products to your existing customers. Those are a few potential alternatives. Okay, let's say we want to then sell more products to our existing customers. Well, an example on that front is something like a product recommendation engine, right? Figuring out, again, back to the earlier example of the tent and the flashlight, figuring out what are those ancillary products that you could sell to a customer that naturally, go together with the products that you're purchasing. And ultimately, companies have a large amount of data that can help them determine those optimal answers. And so that's just one example, but theoretically, any high-level driver can walk through this same process of working your way backwards into that lower level project or machine learning algorithm that you could potentially build in order to improve your business. Key number 2, know your team. And this is, I wanted to highlight some of the different roles and responsibilities within any machine learning project. Now, that isn't to say that you have to have this particular person be any one individual. Oftentimes within a team, you'll have a given individual who might have multiple of these skills. But the point being, you at least need to have somebody kind of thinking from these different points of view for making that machine learning project successful. So the first one is your business analyst, right? These are your business domain experts. Oftentimes they are embedded within the business, and their job is to, understand exactly what goes into the manufacturing process, or understand exactly, what types of marketing are out there, and ultimately what's making them successful. They understand the nature of your business, understand the data, work closely with the business to understand the requirements behind, what are some of those hypotheses within the business, right, that might provide the data scientists with the right level of insights on that business problem to come up with that winning machine learning approach or that winning solution. So business analyst is one role that's critical within the machine learning project. Next one would be your data engineers. And so your data engineers also, could be called data modelers, data architects, something in that range, typically responsible for things like your ETL, or your extract, transform, and load process. But these are people that are ultimately delivering the data to who needs it, right? Whether that's to the business or to the data scientist, ensuring that the data is there, it has a high quality, that it's clean data to be worked with. Oftentimes, there's a lot of real-time ingestion requirements for machine learning projects, and so this data engineering role then really takes on a primary focus. Certainly, the data scientist, the person that's actually doing a lot of the exploratory analysis and modeling and building of the algorithms. However, I would caution against, oh, I want to go down the machine learning path. I'm going to go out and I'm going to hire this whiz-bang, PhD data scientist. I've seen that go wrong, again, far more times than I think I've seen that work out. And the reason is that in order for that to work out, organizationally needs to be prepared in order to, capture the value of machine learning, but also to leverage machine learning, right? A lot of times the data and the outputs of machine learning may be the opposite of what in executives, gut instincts say. And so there's got to be a level of awareness there in order to really harness the power. And so at the end of the day, you don't want to go out and hire this incredible data scientist and then have them building some reports or some dashboards, right? They'll either get incredibly bored and leave you, or you'll be drastically overpaying for a report developer, one of the two. And so it's really critical to understand all these different roles within the team, and again align back to the organization and have a plan and a strategy moving forward, as opposed to just kind of going out and hiring someone. The other role that's important is your software engineers. This is someone that writes clean production level code based on a set of technical requirements, most likely from the data scientist. Between software engineers and data science, sometimes you get data scientists that know a little about engineering, or you can get the reverse. You can get software engineers that know a little bit about machine learning. So those are two situations or environments to be aware of. But the reality is that especially within your high-tech, kind of software, technology-oriented companies, software engineering takes on an entirely new discipline, and the majority of data scientists probably are not writing code at that level. Their expertise lies more in the data, analyzing the data, knowing the right algorithms to apply, the statistical processes, etc. So something to be aware of, depending on your environment, that may be more or less important. And then certainly you've got your executive sponsors, always important, ensuring alignment within your organization, getting your organizational approval. All of these things are really important in order to ensure the long-term success of your machine learning initiatives. Then the last one, and I have a special kind of call outside for product managers. And so what is the role of the product manager? Product manager really sets the roadmap, right, of a product. What features should you include? Making sure that you're capturing the right customer data, making sure that you've got the right processes in place to facilitate improvement back into whatever product that is, so that it can become this ongoing environment that can continue to get better. I was a product manager, like I said, for a few years at Amazon, as we move forward, I think having a product manager that's well-versed in AI technologies, at least on a cursory level, will be a huge advantage for organizations. So there's, having that product manager that kind of sits at that intersection between the customer, the technology, and the business, that can figure out, okay, what are the best ways that we could potentially apply machine learning in order to improve this project, or at least, like I mentioned earlier, somebody that within the machine learning team is taking on that role, right? Taking on this role of leading the given product and ensuring that you can ultimately kind of get alignment across these three fronts between technology, the business, and ultimately the customers. And I think this becomes really important within machine learning from a management of expectations perspective, right? Machine learning is kind of at danger now, being at the peak of the Gartner hype cycle. And so what that means is that a lot of people are talking about it, and a lot of people have unrealistic expectations for what it can do, especially kind of in the short run here over the course of the next couple years, say within your organization. Is it going to automate your entire sales staff? Well, probably not, right? But the reality is it might, and the point being that somebody that can control this hype, even internally within your organization, of okay, this is explicitly what machine learning can do for us, and this is how we should be thinking about it within our products, within our services. So I've got another kind of little call out to put on our product manager hats for a minute and kind of think about where are some of the best places where you can go about applying machine learning or artificial intelligence. The most successful applications of machine learning in the enterprise have come from a technique known as supervised learning, which basically means given X, then predict Y. Right? So given some set of inputs or some set of data attributes, then predict some Y. That could be an event, like predict which customers are likely to leave us, next month. That could also be a number, right? Like predict how much a customer is likely to spend with us over the course of the next year. You know, as a hypothetical to sort of thinking through this process of given X predict Y, you know, if I told you that I have a daughter who wears diapers, and just with that one data point, you could predict that my daughter is probably somewhere between the ages of 0 and 3, and in fact, you would be correct. But the point being, this is kind of a simple example, but you get the idea, right? Behind take some attribution and then predict some outcome that's pertinent for your organization. This is the sort of general kind of way of thinking through how you can go about applying supervised learning. So the next key that I found for implementing machine learning projects is to know what you're getting into. And the analogy that I like to draw is from a plant to a book. So machine learning is much more like a plant as opposed to an inanimate object like a book. But think of it as that living, breathing entity. And the reason I like to draw this analogy is that a lot of customers I talk with have a much different starting point, right? They either A, think it's like any other analytics project. We can create some SQL, throw together a dashboard or report, and then we'll just consume that information, right? And that probably won't change for the next 6 months, probably won't change for the next 12 months. Our sales report today will be the same sales report we're using in 3 years. So that's one way of you know, that I've seen customers thinking about it. And then B, it's like any other software we write. We write some code, we throw it in production, and you know, assuming there's no major issues or anything along those lines, we can kind of call it a day. That it'll just go on and do what it is we set it out to do. And that's what I would call sort of the set it and forget it mentality. Machine learning is really like neither of these from my perspective. So machine learning algorithms often require ongoing ingestion of new data, retraining of the algorithms in order to capture, you know, new insight from your customer base, for example. So if you know, all of a sudden start selling some new products or introduce a new product line, you want that information to be captured in your machine learning algorithm. And ultimately, this comes to, you know, a portion of ongoing maintenance. A lot of times, these processes require entire infrastructure on their own. From a stack and a server perspective and databases of their own right. So viewing ML as just a piece of code can be a dangerous pathway to go down. And the you know, or viewing it as sort of a analytics project like a static dashboard report, again, kind of launches you down the wrong path. And so thinking about this, know what you're getting into, right? Thinking about this from a long-term perspective that once you start down the machine learning path, it's just something that continues to grow and continues to offer value in you know, unforeseen ways. And so that's something to keep in mind as you're going down the path of implementing machine learning. Key number 4, and I think that there's probably a fair amount of people, or at least a fair amount of advice out there that drastically is drastically different opinion than my own on this topic. But from my standpoint, plan for production and do so yesterday. That, you know, you don't necessarily want to kind of get too bogged down in the details of you know, getting into production. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you're thinking through this in a long-term perspective. So there are, you know, data pipelines, retraining, ongoing analysis, and a host of other activities that we just kind of walk through, right? That ultimately add this additional layer of production complexity. I've seen a lot of great machine learning projects fail to deliver the ROI because of this singular step. That if you cannot ultimately deploy into a standardized and a safe, efficient production environment, then it doesn't matter how great that algorithm may have been or how great that machine learning implementation was. The reality is it's never going to have a lasting impact on your customers. And in fact, quite literally just yesterday, I was listening to a very well-respected data scientist, and one of the things they said is just throw it over to IT. Don't worry about this step. Just get to the end and toss it over. And I just had to kind of shake my head, because that's how great models go to die. And it isn't the data scientist's fault or IT's fault, right? It's that everybody needs to be on board from day one. And this is especially crucial in your software or your larger technology shops, where scale is such a critical factor. So serving recommendations to a few 100 million people is a much different problem to solve from an engineering standpoint versus a couple 100,000 or a couple million. The same thing can go on the data side. Ingesting a billion records of data is a different engineering challenge than standing up a database for a few million records. And so those are the types of points that ultimately, if you're not thinking through the long term, thinking through what that production environment will be, that you're kind of doomed to fail at the finish line. And there's a lot of software projects that ultimately sort of make it to 95%, right? But they never actually get out the door. And this is exactly the same in a machine learning environment. So plan for production, and from my perspective, you cannot do that early enough. Start yesterday within your machine learning project. Key number 5, know what works. There's no point in reinventing the wheel. There are a bunch of great use cases out there to start with for pretty much any type of company. As I said, we tend to focus on the growth side of the house at Lumidatum, so driving revenue and sales, work a lot within the marketing use cases. So I've highlighted a few of those, but certainly there's an equal number of use cases within manufacturing or other types of environments. The reality is that there is a lot of documentation that's out there that highlights, what are some great practical use cases. And something that we help our customers with a lot is starting at the obvious kind of starting point, right? Don't try to go solve an incredibly nuanced or niche type of problem specific only to your organization and be the first person to do it. You can, but oftentimes that creates a much more difficult pathway in order to get to some momentum behind your machine learning initiatives and get some initial ROI. So in order to do that, what we suggest is that kind of focus on some of the obvious examples that are tried and true. Certainly, Google's made hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars on ad targeting. Amazon's made hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars on product recommendations. These are all areas that are sort of tried and true from a machine learning standpoint, that they can deliver real ROI, that you can use them to then segue into some of those more nuanced particular applications. And the reality is that within every organization, there is a host of particular specific type of problems that are unique to your organization that machine learning is a great potential application for. And so what I would say, in order to get some momentum to get to that point where you can solve some of those problems, start with some of the obvious ones. Start with some of the ones that people have done before. Okay, so just a quick recap on the 5 keys that we've identified to winning with machine learning. Identify what winning looks like for you and your organization. Tie it to a big level strategic driver that'll ultimately help propel you with some momentum moving forward. 2, know your team, know the skill sets, know what skill sets you need to add in order to be successful within the machine learning space, particularly from that product management perspective. Know what you're getting into, sort of plan for the long term, think about production early on, and ultimately, kind of get started and know what works and start with some of those use cases. And with that being said, I will open it up for any questions. There is a link to the Lumidatum website in the attachments and links if you would like to check that out. There's also, I'll throw up a few links to some different articles on some of the things to watch out for with machine learning and some of the areas to go down. But with that being said, we'll open up the questions from the audience. Okay, so we've got a good question here. Are there any best practices to prioritize competing ML opportunities, in particular at the initial stages of introducing machine learning into an organization's products and processes? So, I would say the kind of old school way of prioritization, ultimately, which one's going to deliver the biggest impact. And I know that that's kind of the cheap and easy answer, and oftentimes that might be a little bit of a gray area or hard to figure out. But I think that's really the key, trying to figure out which one of these opportunities will deliver the largest impact. The other kind of heuristic to utilize on that front is which one will deliver the largest impact the fastest, right? So you don't want to be stuck in this kind of long 3-year project to nowhere kind of deal that ultimately doesn't end up delivering. So whatever's going to deliver the largest impact and do that at the fastest time, I think is the way that I would say some of the best practices to prioritize potential competing opportunities. Okay. Any other questions from the audience? Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Patrick Rice, on the Secrets to Winning with Machine Learning webinar. Appreciate your attendance, and thanks a lot.